My first day in jail. My first experience being locked up was in San Francisco Juvenile Hall in the early 60s. I was 7 years old. My second grade teacher was reading a story from the book Curious George. She was very boring. My teacher was a 40-ish-year-old Caucasian woman. She was slim built, blonde hair, and about 5 foot 2 inches tall. I don't even remember her name. She may have been a substitute teacher. I don't remember. I was very bored listening to her, so I decided to talk to one of my classmates. My teacher got very angry, and she slammed the book down on the desk. Then she rushed towards me, angrily. She grabbed both of my shoulders. Then with her left hand, she slapped me so hard it left her handprint on my face. I was shocked. I thought to myself, bitch, you didn't just slap me, did you? My mama don't even slap me. She was still holding on to me when I slapped her back. It was just a reflex. From what I remember, my classmates reacted with a gasp. They were shocked by what I did. I was 7 years old when this happened. The teacher grabbed me and pulled me to the principal's office. He just looked at me. I bet he was thinking, why, you little nigger. I was so scared. They sent me home with a note saying I couldn't come back until I had a hearing. When I got home, my mother was still at work. I was petrified that when she gets home and reads the note, that she was going to tear my butt up. I had to go to juvenile hall for a hearing that week. Instead of going back home, they made me spend the night there at juvenile hall. I don't remember the conversation of why they locked me up. I remember it wasn't like a jail. It was a single padded room about 8 by 10. I remember looking up at the ceiling. It seemed so high up there. And I remember having all kinds of crazy thoughts, like all the horror movies I watched, like Frankenstein, Werewolf, Dracula, just all the horror movies that were out at the time. I was scared. I could not tell what time of day it was. I think eventually fear put me to sleep. I didn't get to go back to that school, John Sweat. My mother enrolled me into a Catholic school that lasted 1 day. The nun was telling me about the rules of the school. And then she told me to hold my hand out. And I did. Then she hit me with a ruler. I jerked my hand back and said, bitch. And that's a whole nother story. Looking back at my life, there were these moments, these unexpected slaps. I mean, I would be going along thinking things were copacetic, right? And out of nowhere, smack. School was never easy for me. but hustling was second nature. At 15, I was still in school, working, hustling. Like many young brothers, I wanted to be an entertainer, an athlete, and a player. And oh yeah, I had a secret. I wanted to be an astronaut. You know, space travel, rockets, Star Trek. I love Star Trek. Those years from 15 to 21 were scary and exciting at the same time. The late 60s, early 70s, the civil rights movement was going on, protests against the Vietnam War, Haight-Ashbury movement, hippies. And the Bay Area was the center of all of it. I don't remember my thinking was those years. I think I was trying to figure out what I wanted in life. At 15, I was already hustling. A little more on that later. Actually, my hustling really started at 12 years old. I had a paper route, and I was chopping bricks and selling weed and pills to the hookers in the neighborhood. But somehow, maintaining school was a top priority for me because I had a goal. I was going to be an astronaut. When I was a paper boy, I remember delivering papers in the hood and in rich neighborhoods. And I met people from all walks of life, politicians, preachers, and prostitutes, and local entertainers. They all gave me advice on education and life. My father, Jeffrey Griffin, ran several barbershops around the city. But the earliest one I remember was in the early 60s, the Chicago Barbershop on Post and Fillmore. When you say Post and Fillmore, what you're really talking about is the heart of the black community in San Francisco. Restaurants, clubs, lots of liquor stores. I remember seeing the drug addicts up on McAllister Street, nodding off on corners. A couple of blocks up, you got your players and hookers doing their business. And also, you had the Chicago Barbershop. Everybody knew my daddy. They all came to the shop. Nate Thurman, Sam Cooke, Willie Mays, a couple of other giants like Orlando Cepeda. And politicians came sitting right next to the pimps, and they all, in one way or another, gave good advice. They said, "Stay in school, young man," they would say. Even players would say stuff like, "If you're going to be a player, be an educated player." Once on my birthday, Sam Cooke gave me a $50 bill. He was always coming into my daddy's shop. I didn't really know how famous he was. He was just another customer. I also remember when this guy walked in the shop. I remember the look on his face. He said, "Sam is dead. Sam Cooke is dead." I remember the shock on people's faces. Even with all the positive input and advice I was given, even with the goal I had in mind, the streets, the system had its own goal. And so, my first experience in real jail was in 1971 in San Francisco County Jail. When I was around 18 years old, I hung out at this woman's house. Her name was Crystal. I was hanging out with the guys I grew up with. We were doing our business out of her house. She had the weed connection, and I had the coke. Things are going fine. We're making money. It's running smoothly. Until everybody started using their product. Coke was the drug of choice for them. I liked heroin. Things got sloppy, and one day the police are knocking on the door. I was in the closet patching up heroin when I heard them announce themselves. I started trying to get rid of the drugs in a pot of water, and it worked. Unfortunately, everybody else was not so lucky, and we all went to jail. I remember being body searched. They made me put my fingers through my hair, open my mouth, lift up my tongue, then cough. Bent over, spread my cheeks, lift both feet. They were looking for drugs or paraphernalia. This was a shock to me, another slap in the face. I was scared and I was humiliated. I wasn't out of county jail very long before I was back hustling, actually back in school again. But before long, smack, busted again. This was different. You see, county jail was one thing, but being in state penitentiary was a whole other thing. It's 1973, I'm 20 years old, and now I'm doing time in the pen. I went to Vacaville Prison first. This was the facility where they sent you to evaluate you and decide where you would be doing your time. They had a farm, a furniture plant, an auto shop, and a dairy farm. Lots of jobs to do. Vacaville was also an institution where big companies used to experiment with drugs on inmates. You would get paid for that too, but they made you sign a waiver, you know, just in case you had a reaction to the drugs and something blew out of your face, they would not be responsible for it. That was also the first time I saw real transsexuals. I assumed they were experimenting on them too, with implants, silicone, and other drugs. I was shocked when I saw this. I was walking down the hall with other inmates when I saw them. I thought, they got women in here? I didn't know. Now, the kind of crime you committed determined where you would be doing your time. I had committed a low-level crime, narcotics related. So I could go to any low-level prison like a camp or something like that. But I told them I wanted to go to San Quentin. They were shocked and asked, why would I want to go there? Because at the time, San Quentin was a tough prison. It was the #1 dangerous prison in California at that time. I told them I wanted to go there because it was close to my home. They told me I was too young to go there, so they sent me to Solitaire prison. Right around that time, a guard had got killed at one of the prisons in California. So all the prisons in California was locked down. So when I got to Solitaire, we were only allowed to go to the child hall and back to the cell 24/7. But I got lucky after that. Got a job in the prison kitchen. Let me tell you about this. Getting a job in the kitchen was one of the best jobs you can get in prison. You can eat what you want, make sandwiches on the slide for other people. When I had worked there for about 2 weeks, one of the kitchen inmates gathered us around and said, we're going to strike. I said, okay. I didn't know why we were striking, but you learn to go along in prison. Of course, the guards found out what we were planning. The lieutenant separated us. They spoke with us one by one, and I was the very first one they called. He asked me, was I one of the strikers? I told him, yeah, I was going to strike. I was sent to one side of the kitchen. Then he spoke to all the others. one by one, and they all went to the other side of the kitchen. I was sitting all by myself. I want to know what the heck. The lieutenant comes back to me, and all the others were getting up and leaving. I asked him where the other workers are going. He told me they were going back to work. So I asked, what about me? He said, well, son, you're going to the hole. I said, what? He said I was going to the hole. Smack again. I said, no, that's all right, I'll go back to work. He looked at me and laughed and said, I could, but that I would have to go to a disciplinary hearing. When I got back to the kitchen, I told the guys to never involve me in none of that shit in the future. I got to Soledad in the summer of 1973. I was there for about 3 or 4 months. And while I was there was a riot, and I got hurt pretty bad and all that mess. I got sent to San Quentin for medical care. I was supposed to be there a week or so, but I stayed for about 18 months. I had gotten my wish and was close to home. On my very first day in the yard at San Quentin, an inmate got stabbed. I happened to be playing dominoes with a group of other inmates. I was slamming 10s and 15s. I was really into it. The man that got stabbed was also playing with us too. When he got stabbed, he fell on me at the table. I was green. I didn't know how to get out the way. Some of the other inmates chastised me for not being aware of my surroundings. They told me to never get so engrossed that I did not know what was going on around me. I had never played dominoes since that day. I went back and forth from one institution to another for the next 4.5 years. Tracy for about 4 months, back to Soledad, then I was sent to Folsom Prison, transferred back to Soledad before ending up again in San Quentin, where I was finally able to get into the work furlough program. I was able to get a job at Wells Fargo Bank, worked in the program for a couple of months, then released to go home. I kept working for Wells Fargo for about 6 years after getting out of prison in 1978. I witnessed over 8 stabbings while in San Quentin. I met people from all criminal lifestyles. Most of the inmate population were addicts, but there are some people I will never forget, and some slaps in the face that will always sting in my face when I think about them. If I could sit down for a moment or two with my 7-year-old self and talk with him, I would tell him, "Hey Larry, what's up? Hey Larry, what's going on with you? I see you starting to this path of destruction. Wanting to be in the lifestyle of a player ain't all that. It's a path of addiction to drugs, jails, institutions, and death. I know you're going to like the glamour of ladies of the evening, the fancy cars, clothes, the pimps and players wear, but there's another way to get them other than by illegal means. And your dream of becoming an astronaut, that is possible, little man. It's possible despite the fact that you're a black man coming up in the radical tensions of the 60s. Listen to the old guys that talk to you at your dad's barbershop. When you become a paperboy and the clients talk to you about their experience, listen to them and listen to them hard. I know you're going to do what you want to do, but this is your older self talking to you. And I've done lived what you are about to experience. Keep your head up, young man. Don't lose your dreams. Keep learning from the people and the lessons around you. You are 7 years old and learning about life every day. I am 68 years old, and you know what? I'm still learning about life every day too.